ES Audio.
From the Evening Standard in London, I'm Rochelle Travers, and this is The Leader. Bedbugs. Is an infestation on its way to London? In a recent TV interview, the Deputy Mayor of Paris has warned that the French capital is in the midst of a bedbug infestation, calling it widespread and adding that in reality, no one is safe. Footage of the blood-sucking insects in Paris has gone viral on social media too, with individuals posting warnings alleging the pests are swarming some holiday rental properties. It's led to growing concerns in London that the creepy critters could soon be on their way here. Eurostar has announced preventative methods are in place to stop the spread of the pests, and a TfL spokesperson told The Independent that it was not aware of any outbreak in London, but it would monitor the situation closely and stick to its rigorous and thorough cleaning measures. So, just how worried should we be about the so-called Paris bedbug infestation reaching our capital? Here with me now is Dr. Richard Naylor, entomologist and director of the Bedbug Foundation, which provides free advice on what to do about the pests.
We've seen bedbugs increasing very rapidly from about year 2000. Prior to that, no one had really seen them for about 50 years. And up until 2019, they were really increasing very rapidly year on year. And then the pandemic actually knocked them back quite significantly because it stopped tourism and prevented them from spreading, dispersing. And I think that we're now in the bounce back of that. So it's taken a few years for them to start recovering again. And now they're on the increase, but they're not back to their pre-pandemic levels, I don't think yet. And so what's happening in Paris is, yes, they certainly do have lots of bedbugs, but so do all the other major cities. So bedbugs have recently become a hot political topic in Paris. And I think part of that is due to the run up to the Olympics, and people are asking what's going to be done about it. And the whole pest control industry is asking the same question. And over the past decade has really developed lots of new technologies. The standard way of controlling bedbugs was insecticides of several different classes. And over time, we've lost many of the classes of insecticide, and we're mostly down to pyrethroids. So most insecticides used for bedbugs belong to this class called the pyrethroids, and bedbugs are already very resistant to these. So the whole pest control industry has been trying to find alternative ways to control them. And that might be sticky traps or devices that go around the bed legs, or training scent detection dogs. There's a rapidly growing industry in France at the moment, well, across Europe, but particularly in France, training up scent detection dogs and offering this service to hotels so that they can identify where the bugs are and how they've spread in order to tackle it more efficiently.
How much of a risk is there that this so-called Paris bedbug infestation could hit London?
Yes, I don't think that's a genuine risk at all, because I think that bedbugs are already a big problem in London and every other city in the UK. And so, yes, of course, there will be some flow of bedbugs in that direction, but just as many people will be travelling to Paris and taking bugs with them from London and every other big city. They just move around with us and follow us wherever there are high human population densities. So there are lots of people in Paris, and therefore there are lots of bedbugs, but it's the same for everywhere else.
For those who aren't that familiar with bedbugs, what exactly are they and why are they so problematic?
Bedbugs have had a very long association with humans. They're really bat bugs, and they belong to a family called the Cymetidae, which has about 100 very similar bugs in it that mostly feed on bats and cave nesting birds. And just 2 of these species have jumped onto humans. And we think that happened between 5 and 20,000 years ago, and probably while we were still living in caves. So they followed us out into civilization and have been with us all that time. And up until the 1930s, there were reports of bedbugs in almost every house in London. And after the Second World War, we developed quite a few new classes of insecticides, including the organochlorines and DDT, which is the famous one. And this was very effective, and it almost wiped out bedbugs. And for 50 years, there were really no bedbugs. People hardly ever saw them. There were just very low-level populations that would pop up here and there, but they were really not a problem. And then from about year 2000, they suddenly started increasing.
What are some of the signs to look out for that you have bedbugs?
So bedbugs are very messy. They're also very shy, and they hide. They don't like light, so they hide in like dark crevices, usually in the structure of the bed, not far from where they feed. And then, but because they drink entirely blood, and because they're drinking all this liquid, they produce a lot of liquid, and it comes out as a kind of inky black spot. And so they leave these spots all over the bedding, and particularly in concentrations around the areas where they're hiding, which is often the first thing that people notice, aside from the bites. Not everyone reacts to the bites. About 30% of people don't react at all. And so sometimes these black spots are the best indication that there are bedbugs there.
And they aren't a risk to our health, are they?
I would say they're a huge risk to our mental health. They very rarely have a physical health impact. Just occasionally they get so severe that they can cause people to become anemic. And a small proportion of people have fairly severe allergic reactions to them, but that's quite rare. But the mental health impacts of bed bugs can be quite extreme. It forces people to become isolated because they either fear taking bed bugs with them or they fear that people coming to visit them will take bed bugs away. And people are often afraid of who's going to pay the treatment costs, so they don't report infestations and they take on this battle themselves, spraying whatever they have available at them. So people often become very, very depressed and anxious and sleep deprived, and it can leave lasting kind of post-traumatic stress as a result of having infestations of bed bugs. Yeah, so it can be, it really has a much higher health impact than people realise.
Let's go to the ads. Stay there to hear more from Dr. Richard Naylor from the Bedbug Foundation on his advice to treat and prevent bed bugs. Why not hit rate and follow in the meantime? Welcome back. Still with me is Dr. Richard Naylor, entomologist and director of the Bedbug Foundation. So Richard, what is the best way to get rid of bed bugs?
Treating it kind of depends on what the situation is. If you're in a standalone house and you've brought bed bugs home from your holiday, then that's a relatively simple problem to solve. You can pay for a professional to come in and use one of a few methods. It might be a chemical treatment, or it might be a heat treatment or a steam treatment. These are all good ways of getting rid of them, but it takes a professional really to know where the bugs will be hiding and make sure that they get adequate access to them. So they're not easy to get rid of, but at least in a standalone house where you've accidentally brought bed bugs in, you can solve the problem and then hopefully not see them again. But the bigger problem is in apartment blocks and sheltered housing, low income housing, places where people live in high density populations, and bed bugs then spread very easily. And in this situation, if all of your neighbours have got bed bugs, it's very difficult to protect yourself. You can do things like there are kinds of special dishes that fit under the bed legs, which bed bugs get trapped in like a moat. And you can pull the bed away from the wall and stop your duvet from touching the floor at night. And you can turn your bed into kind of an island. This is probably your best option if you're living in an apartment block and the people around you have bed bugs. So there's always going to be this influx of new bed bugs coming into your apartment.
Are there ways to prevent getting them?
Yeah, I guess awareness. So common ways to get bed bugs are while you're on holiday, you can leave your rucksack or suitcase on the bed next to you. Sometimes there's a second bed in the hotel, or just leaving it on the bed overnight is generally a bad thing to do, because the bugs come out at night when they detect your body heat and carbon dioxide, and they forage around and they either feed on you or they don't manage to get to you. But either way, they then go and look for somewhere to hide. And if your bag is right there, they'll just crawl into it looking as a suitable crevice to crawl into. And then you take it with you. Another good way to get bed bugs is secondhand furniture, or, picking up mattresses that are left outside people's houses. This often happens, and people bring infested furniture into their houses accidentally. So obviously if you're using secondhand furniture, then you just need a really careful inspection to make sure it hasn't got any hitchhikers with it. And they are messy, so usually a careful inspection is enough to rule them out. An adult bedbug is about the size and colour of an apple seed, so easily visible. And a first instar bedbug is about the size of maybe a grain of brown sugar, and then it gets quite a bit bigger the first time it feeds and looks all red and chubby.
There were some stats released over the summer by a pest management company that suggested there has been a 65% increase in bed bugs year on year across the country. Do you agree with that number? And if so, why is that happening?
So between 2005 and 2019, that was the kind of thing we were seeing everywhere. And we're still really piecing together what the impact of COVID has been, because it's had a different impact in different environments. But the effect of stopping all the tourism really knocked bed bugs back, possibly by 50% or so. Yeah, and so it's really difficult to say. Obviously, in the sheltered housing and the apartment blocks, bed bugs weren't so affected by COVID, and maybe it even benefited them because people were forced to stay in their houses more than normal. But stopping tourism prevented bed bugs from moving between hotels and guest houses and hostels and things, and reduced the number of bed bugs on the transport networks. And so it had some strange, unexpected impacts on bedbug populations in different sectors, and we're still trying to figure out what that looks like.
What is your advice to anyone out there who might be worried about a bedbug infestation coming here from Paris?
London has many infestations. There are many pest controllers who specialise in bedbugs and spend all day in London just treating infestations. And so people in London don't need to be worried about bedbugs coming from Paris because they're already here. You can arm yourself with an awareness of what to look for, what those early signs are, the black spots on the sheets or the car skins. And you can, when you travel, you can be aware. You see, it's worth being aware that bedbugs right now are much, much lower than they have been historically.
So essentially, it's all a bit of a media storm and we shouldn't worry too much because bedbugs are already here in London.
Yeah, that's exactly it. There was a very similar media storm around bedbugs in 2012 in the run-up to the London Olympics. And so I think that we're just seeing the same thing in France now. It's a political and media frenzy. And yes, there is a serious problem and it's a growing problem, but it's a global problem. It's not just a Paris problem.
You can read more on this story and others in the Evening Standard newspaper or on our website, standard.co.uk. And that's it from this episode of The Leader. This podcast is back tomorrow at 4 p.m.